Zach, I know you hate jokes, but I'm going to try one right now, okay? All right. What is the name of the Disney movie about the fish with cancer?
Finding Aladdin?
Finding Chemo.
I
Finding Aladdin? What the hell was what?
I was making crap up, man.
Clearly.
Finding Chemo. That's really funny. I wonder how the movie ends. Can you tell us? He did. Okay, good. Ooh, happy ending for a Disney movie.
Yes.
I didn't know.
Well, it depends on how you feel. There's a divide amongst people regarding chemo. Some people say that based on what people believe about it, finding is a good thing. Other people say finding it is a bad thing, and that's the thing that's ultimately going to kill the cancer patient. Mm-hmm. So it depends how you feel about chemo.
That's an interesting point. I mean, for me, you guys may know this if you've been around the podcast for a while. My dad did pass away from cancer, so he had chemotherapy many times throughout the 4 years after his diagnosis, 3 or 4 years, I think, was after his diagnosis. Chemo's rough. Chemo's rough on people, and I think that's obviously you're pouring radiation into your body to try to fight the disease, and the radiation also harms your body at the same time. So obviously, I get
and your body's already in bad shape to begin with. So the body's not equipped to deal with that anyway, and now it's really not equipped to deal with it because it's weaker than it was.
Yeah, exactly. But I've asked myself many times, if I ended up getting cancer, what would I do? I think a lot of us have probably asked ourselves that question. What would you do if you found yourself in this situation? It sucks. I really wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Okay.
What a bold statement.
I know. Wouldn't recommend cancer to anyone. I don't mean chemo.
Did you hear what that guy said in the Value Added podcast? I never heard it before. He recommended not to get cancer. Can you believe that?
Yeah. Look, you know what? I strongly recommend it with the Value Added approval.
Strongly.
Stamp of approval from the Value Added podcast. Anyway. Strongly, yes.
Okay.
All right, guys. Welcome to the Value Added podcast. And my name is Zach. Bryan, he is here as well. And we are here today to discuss getting a job versus going to college and getting yourself a degree. Many of you guys are listening to this episode who have a degree. Many of you guys are listening to this episode who don't. Whether you finished your education in high school or maybe even another point before then, dropped out of high school. There's plenty of people I know who's dropped out of high school as well. There's a lot to talk about this topic, okay? There are good statistics that you can find, good articles you can find that kind of show and do some comparison differences. Today we're going to be discussing not necessarily the statistical evaluation of this position or of this topic. We're going to be talking a bit more about what it's like to go through these processes, whether you have debt going out of college, the career paths, the outlook that you have after getting out of college. And I hope that through this conversation we have today, of course we're going to talk about more stuff, that you guys might have a better understanding and idea of, well, which one is the best choice for you. Ultimately, I can tell you here, spoiler alert, it's up to you what you decide to do with your life, but there are certainly pros and cons to this topic as there are to many others.
Yeah, and right off the bat, I can already think that this particular topic, the statistics are probably not super relevant to the way we're steering towards it, because when it comes to like whether you should go to college or get a job, the statistics about these amount of people have a college degree, that doesn't mean anything for the purposes of whether or not you should or shouldn't. Even if it branches out into the amount of people that are in college make this certain amount of money, that may not be relevant because it depends on what field they get into, and we'll get into a lot of this as we go on. But right away, and this goes back to our statistics episode and the how they can be skewed and tailored to whatever agenda you want to fit. This type of topic, I can easily see statistics being skewed. If you want to be in the pro-college field, you skew statistics and make it look like college is the way to go, or not going to college is not the way to go, and vice versa. So right off the bat, I'm totally okay with not giving statistics because I don't think it's going to be very helpful here.
Oh, I get that. And also, it's kind of funny if those statistics do exist, and I'm sure they do. It's probably from Harvard or something like that, where they do their studies.
Of course, yes.
No
bias. The college says that you should. That the college says that you should go to college. Yeah. Big surprise. Yes.
All right, so let's start off with finances, the financial aspect. I think this is where a lot of people end up deciding on what they want to do. Yeah, there are people who are obviously passionate about a certain direction they want to go with their lives. But there's a lot of financial decision making that goes into going to college or not. I also think, from the perspective, for giving the perspective to the college itself, the college has a financial stake in people going to college more. So they will peddle the idea that this is great for your future, great for your life, in order to go and get your education. I see ads all the time when I'm watching a TV or watching whatever, looking at something on my phone. I see all the time for ads for college. These colleges make a lot of money, and they have the money to kind of advertise. I would say it's on par with the pharmaceutical industry regarding how much money they pour into advertising, because that's where they get the revenue from. People deciding to sign up for college. And so, yes, they have a vested interest in making it sound better and get you excited about the idea more than what reality might hold on the other side of it. But for people going to college specifically because you say, hey, I want to go to college and I want to make a lot of money. You don't have a particular career path in mind. You just want to make a lot of money. Might not be the best idea to go into college without a clear direction as to what you need to do and whether or not it's necessary to get a degree in order to do that job. Brian, obviously you mentioned before the episode started, you talked about doctors. I don't know if you want to expand upon that point a little bit.
Yeah, so I don't know if I've ever brought this up in a podcast episode. It doesn't really matter whether I did or didn't, because I'm doing it right now. But if I were in a position of like guiding somebody, like a child a child of mine, or even not a child of mine, but somebody who looks up to me as some sort of like authority figure, and I would give them guidance, and it got to the purpose of college, I think the thing I would say to them is, when it comes to going to college, one of the first things that needs to be decided is what you're going to college for, because there are certain things that you have to go to college for. And doctor, like you said, is the best example of that. And there's two reasons why you have to go to college to become a doctor. Number one, the degree that you get for being a doctor is what you need for other people to take you serious as a doctor. It's the stamp of approval. I got my medical license. You can't get that without going to college. Mm-hmm. So just that alone, that's the way of telling other people, I did what I need to do to get to this point. I know my shit. And it's the easiest way to show it, other than a whole breakdown of the 20 years you spent studying medicine. The other thing that happens is, because being a doctor, unless you're some kind of gifted Doogie Howser kind of person, you're not going to have the requisite knowledge and expertise and familiarity with being a doctor unless you go through the process of getting the degree. So it's not just about the degree, it's about the process. And you can't do that without going to college, at least in most cases. But that's not true of the case. What I just said does not apply to all career paths. There are some paths you do not need college to go through. You don't need a college degree or license to do the specific field. You don't need the process that college will take you through to learn it. You can learn those things elsewhere, and you can just be competent at what you're doing without showing a degree to everyone. Like if you're going to be a plumber, you don't need to have some kind of plumbing license that you need to show people. You work for the plumbing company, you go there and you fix their pipes. The person says, okay, they know what they're doing. And that's the end of it. So the first thing you need to ask yourself when it comes to going to college is, what am I going to college for? I guess two-pronged question. What am I going to college for? And do I need to go to college to go down this path? And if not, then is college the right path?
Yeah. Well, really well put. Really well put. I think a lot about the amount of people that go into stuff like community college, for example, because they don't want to get into the workforce yet, or because they're not sure what they want to do. In my opinion, I think that's a big waste of time, okay? Because there's a lot better things that you could be doing if you jump into the workforce, rather than spending the extra time, maybe on the taxpayer's dime, going to college, which is obviously another issue in and of itself. What's interesting about this topic is kind of how it relates to some of the other things we've talked about on the podcast. For example, people when you're teenagers, when you're 16, 17, when you're getting almost done with high school, you're still treated like a child by all of society. All of society still treats you like a child at those ages, even though you have an expectation on you to know what you're doing with your life, which is a very adult decision. Am I right? So that doesn't seem to work well together. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of teenagers get out of high school and they're just unsure of what they're doing with their lives. They don't know what's going on because they've had their hands held far too much. Having requirements to figure out what you want to do with your life, I think, are really, really important for going through school anyway. To be honest with you, there's a lot of jobs that exist out here that you don't even need to go to the high school to have, because they're just so simple, so basic in the things that you need to do. And to your point, Brian, I think it's really the best point. If we could get away from people just going to college to have something to do, or especially even worse, the people who just go for partying or for socialization or something like that. If we can get away from that and get into more serious people going for a very specific reason, I think it would kind of shrink the sizes of colleges down, which is actually going to improve the outcome of the college. Okay, no big class has ever been taught better than a small class. Okay, that's not how it works. More individualized attention is better. If you could shrink down those classes and people come out and they understand more about the topics they're dealing with, whether it's engineers or lawyers or doctors, like you mentioned before, they would have a more quality degree. And the reason I mentioned this part about the small classes and the people who are very serious about getting in the industry is I know some people who have college degrees, okay, may or may not work with some of these people, and their level of understanding of the job that we're doing is as simple as a person right off the street who just has a high school degree getting into the job. It is bare bones, okay? And you ask yourself the question, if I go to school, let's get an example here. Let's use engineering, for example. If I go to school for engineering and I get into a job 4 years later after I get a bachelor's degree in engineering, is my capability of doing the job as an engineer better than someone who spent 4 years in the engineering field, who didn't have the college degree? For something like that, I think it's a better argument. I don't know what side of this you would take, Brian, but I think it's a better argument in that one, because in school you're learning a lot about the math and the psychology behind, or I don't know what the best word here is, but the way that you're building stuff, the reasoning behind why we build things the way that we do, the history behind all of that. You're not going to learn a lot about that on the job. On the job, you're going to learn much more about the practical way that you perform the job and the practical way that you get better at the job. I think going to school is good for something like that, okay? But there are obvious examples and obviously examples of things that are the opposite of it.
So I guess there's three main takeaways from what you said there, and there's no particular order in terms of how I'm going to say it. So the first thing is, I guess that last part that you were saying is a good example of what we talked about before with other things. And most recently, one of our criticisms of the whole abortion thing, which is that it gets abused. College is another example of something that gets abused, because rather than it being for the quote-unquote best and the brightest, for people who have a direct motivation and a vision to want to do something, and the desire to want to learn everything about that specific field and go through the process and so on and so forth, it has become just a hodgepodge of a combination of that and people who want to party and people who don't just want to avoid work and people who want to stay in the high school mode for a little bit longer, and all these things lumped together, and they're all in the same class now. Everyone with different motivations all in the same class. And of course, the school doesn't give a shit because they're making money regardless. If anything, the more people, the merrier. So the motivation has become, let's bring as many people as possible. We're not going to say it because we want to make money. They're going to say it because, everyone needs to go to college. Everyone can make it in college. Everyone deserves to have a future, so on and so forth. But the motivation for them is money. And the motivation for the kids is something very different, but it's kind of all being, one is being used for the other. So the students are abusing the idea of college. Many people who objectively or even subjectively you can determine shouldn't really be going to college, at least not right now, go anyway. And the school, rather than focusing on the students who want to go there to learn something and to excel at a certain craft, they just say, let's bring everybody in, and whatever brings us the most money is totally fine. So that's the first problem, that a big problem that I see with college. And it's similar to another thing you mentioned earlier on, which is you made an analogy to college and pharmaceutical. Because what does pharmaceutical companies do with their advertising and everything? They bombard you with information, scaring you to death, and basically telling you that there's a problem and the only solution is something that we have. In the case of pharmaceuticals, it's if you don't take these pharmaceuticals, you're going to die or be in a terrible position. But don't worry, just buy this and take it for the rest of your life, and you're good. Same thing with college. They tell you without college, you have no future, and you're going to be a bum. But don't worry, we have the solution. Just come to this college, and we're going to take care of it for you. Both sides are motivated by money, but they tell you that they're not. So it's another marketing tactic that works very, very well. It's a different type of thing that they're trying to get you to do. One is some kind of medicine, or maybe it's not medicine, a drug basically that they tell you need for the rest of your life. This one is, I guess, more of a financial burden than anything else, but same kind of thing. And the last thing is, you mentioned how there are many jobs out there you don't even need a high school degree for. That's very, very true. And one of the reasons why, there's many reasons why, but one of the reasons why is, let's say you are in a construction, your dad owns a construction company. You do not need to go to college to learn how to do construction. Your dad can teach you. And you already have the business that you want to work, like you're already going to go into that business, and hopefully if it's done correctly, and maybe you start from the bottom, work your way up, learn the whole business, learn all that. But you're also going to learn construction along the way. Plus, you're your dad's son, so you're likely to have a lot of the same handiness. You're more like Zach than you are like me. So that all those things are going to piece together. You do not need a second of high school or college to learn that. If that's what you want to get into, you can just work with your dad or for your dad the entire time, and then by the time you get to college age and above, you're basically an expert in construction, and you don't need any degree to help you. Not saying that these people should not go to high school or not go to college. I'm just saying that that's an example of how college and high school is not even a factor, and even if it's not your dad's company, even if you just want to learn construction, you can learn construction even if your dad doesn't have a company or you don't have a dad in your life. You can learn construction without going to college. So through YouTube or through working for a construction company or reading books or whatever, there's a lot of different ways you can learn these things that you don't need college for. But colleges try to tell you otherwise, which goes back to the last point I made. Who we listen to telling you that we need college? Colleges. Of course they're going to tell you that. Why would they not? I'm not going to tell you, yeah, we have this great business for you, but don't do it. It sucks. Like, they're not going to tell you that.
To your last point that you're making there about the different trades you can get into, obviously I'm sure you guys are familiar with trade school, what trade school is. I actually went to trade school for one of the careers that I have done, one of the jobs I had worked. I went to trade school, but the trade school I went to was, I think, 6 weeks long. Trade school is not typically anywhere near as long as going to college. And for the example you're talking about, like with construction or electricians or plumbers or any of those skilled labor jobs, trade school is a much better alternative to going to college for those type of jobs. And yeah, you could also get into those jobs, especially if you know somebody or have a small company or something where you don't need to go and get trade school training in order to do it. Mechanics is a great example. There are lots of...
Isn't there also trade school for like bartending? It's like a week long.
I have no idea. That's interesting.
I think I've heard that. I forgot who it was. Might have been my brother, or it might have just been a friend or someone who said that they were thinking about going to bartending school, and I was like, that's a thing. Apparently, it's like a week long, and you just learn how to bartend. Yeah.
I mean, if the price is right and they actually give you some really good information, then I'm not going to argue against it. I think the reason I'm talking kind of in the camp of college is a waste of time for most people. I think the reason I'm in that camp is because I think people spend a lot more time in college than they need to, and just getting out into the workforce is going to give you much better experience for most things. Okay, not everything. I understand there are exceptions, but I think for most things. I also wanted to go back to you're talking about the college's kind of perspective on people. Everyone should go to college. Everyone should get a degree. It's going to be better. It's going to make your life better. See, the problem is oversaturation. Over time, if we look back 20, 40 years or something, and we look at how many people had college degrees at that time, it was a lot less as in terms of a percentage than it is today. Less people were getting college degrees, and so their skill set that they may have gotten in college was worth more than it is today. Now, there's a lot of people going to college and getting degrees, especially for similar fields, especially if they're looking for what is going to be the highest paying thing, only to come out on the other side and not be able to get a job because everyone else is also applying for those jobs and they also have the degrees. But then again, you're also losing out to other people who don't have the degree but have the experience. I've heard, I don't remember what article this was or whatever, what I was reading, but this thing was going pretty in depth on interviewing people about the struggles they've had trying to get a job after going to college, after getting a degree. And a lot of the companies they were trying to apply for wanted prior experience from the people that they were trying to employ. Because even companies recognize that although your degree is valuable, it does not replace the experience that you get on the job. Let me see if I can think of an example here. Let's say you wanted to be a restaurant manager, okay? And I don't mean like a McDonald's manager. I mean like a
steakhouse.
Right, like a steakhouse, or a fancy, a 4-star or a 5-star restaurant kind of experience. You wanted to be a manager of there. Now you can ask yourself the question, do I need to have a bachelor's degree in culinary arts? Or would it be better for me to work my way up through that company in order to get myself a better position in that company? My personal recommendation, absolutely go and work at that company. Absolutely. Because when you work there, you're going to learn how they do things. You're going to learn, you're not going to spend as much time on these blanket ideas that might be important in a certain environment, because not everything's going to apply to what you're doing. If you have to spend the next 2 years, the next 2 years are going to pass, right? Time's going to go on either way. So are you going to spend the next 2 or 4 years sitting behind a desk learning about what you can do without ever getting the chance to have your hands-on experience, or put yourself out there and go ahead and get the job? You're going to start low, but where are you going to be in 4 years from now? That's the question. If you started at the bottom and you're interested in learning how to be a manager, how to manage the inventory, manage people, how to manage the store and customers and everything else, the skills you're going to obtain are tremendously more valuable in this example than it would be for you sitting behind a desk. Okay? College for a lot of parts. So I've been to college. I went to community college, and I also, speaking of culinary school, I went to culinary school as well for a short period of time. But in regular college, I remember I had an idea immediately of what my career path was going to be. I knew why I was there. I knew what I wanted to do with my college degree. But I remember from the first year or two, or about a year and a half, I think, almost all the courses I were taking were these kind of generic education courses, sort of like what you do in high school. In high school, you're taking a lot of general education things. You might not care at all about science, but you still have a science class, right? So in college, it was a similar experience for me as well, where we had these very generic classes that didn't really matter to what I was trying to do. And really, that seems strange to me, right? Because if you're going to college to specialize in one particular thing, then I don't need the rest of this, right? I don't need to spend my time with this. But they do that, I think, in a way to kind of fluff up the time, and maybe there might be a financial motive behind it. I don't want to put any thoughts in
well, that's the thing, that one of the criticisms you hear about school in general is that a lot of it all does is teach you how to just like be an obedient worker, and a lot of it's like busy work. They give you the assignments that don't help you, that don't really help you learn, but it just gives you like a lot of the homework assignments, like go read chapter 1 and then answer the questions at the back. Like, you didn't really learn anything. They just gave you work to do. That's one of the criticisms. It's good though. After a rough beginning, Zach made up for earlier and actually made a good recommendation this time. So good job with that, Zach.
Okay.
Yes. Or at least one that wasn't obvious. Again, since we keep doing this comparison between college and pharmaceuticals, it would be nice if, when you see a pharmaceutical ad, it's very fast and quick, and the person's barely listening, but they give you the side effects, and it's usually a long list. And every time I hear it, I'm like, these side effects are terrible. Like, why would a person want to take the drug when it's like, there's a possible chance you can bleed out your ass, but your allergies will be gone. I'm like, I'll just take the allergies, thank you. But it'd be great if during a college ad, there's some kind of thing where it says, note, this doesn't guarantee you're going to get a job. It doesn't guarantee you're going to get a job in the field that you want. It doesn't going to guarantee you're going to make money. There's still a chance you're going to wind up homeless and broke. It'd be great if they added that kind of disclaimer, but of course they won't. And it's, when you mention oversaturation, the analogy I come up with, maybe this isn't a good analogy, but it's the first one that came to mind. And we've used we've not used this, but we've mentioned this before. How sometimes if a word gets overused, the very word loses its meaning. Like, everyone can't be special. That defeats the whole purpose. Mm-hmm. So if we're just oversaturating, where all these people are suddenly getting this certain degree, the fact you have that degree is no longer impressive.
Right. Because
someone will hear and be like, yeah, okay, you got the degree. Every single person on this street also just got that degree. I'm not impressed by that at all. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, it'll also be where all these people are going into the same field. So eventually there's only so many positions to fill, but there's more people to fill it than are needed. So what's going to separate it? Not the degree. So it has to be something else, which is probably where the experience comes in. Experience is one of those things that can't be taught. As like a sports example, people who have raw talent, and the scouts will see that, and they'll be like, well, we're going to draft this person really high. We're going to pay them a lot of money. They have all this raw talent. But at the end of the day, when there's a reason why the veterans are the leaders of the team. The veterans are the ones that people lean on in crunch time, things like that, mm-hmm. because they have experience. They don't have the raw gifts. Maybe they did, but they don't have the raw gifts anymore or ever that this rookie has. But they had the experience, so the coach trusts the veteran to do certain things because they have the experience. They don't have the skill set or to make this comparison, the schooling that the other person has, but they have the experience. The experience goes a long way.
Yeah. I think about, for myself, I've used contractors before for various things. Would I rather have someone come over who has experience doing what I need them to do, or someone who's fresh out of college and has a degree in what I need them to do? Hey, I need you to cut down my tree. All right, yeah, well, and they pull out the calculator and the piece of paper and they start calculating. No. Cut down the damn tree.
like you see this all the time, where someone is in the doctors and they're really concerned about something. Like, the doctor will see you now, and the person walks in and he has a baby face. He's 20 years old or whatever, or he looks 20, mm-hmm. and he's like, "Hello, I'm your doctor today. Oh, so it's my first day out of medical school." They're like, "I'd rather get the guy who's about to retire tomorrow. Can we get him, please?" Even though the 20-year-old or the one who looks 20-year-old may be extremely bright and is going to want to be the best doctor of all time, but the patient doesn't want to take that chance. They're like, let's just get the guy who knows what he's doing. Thank you very much.
I know there's a stigma in that. I remember being younger, and one of the things I hated the most was not being taken seriously in certain roles, just because of my age, for example.
Yeah, and it's ageism.
It is ageism. I just heard about this woman who got in a car crash. She was 88 years old. And my first thought was, why the hell is this old woman on the road?
That would be your thought.
Yes. Ageism is a thing, obviously. People make... The medical example you just gave is a perfect example, because immediately you say, well, I'm looking for someone who's going to be... my doctor is supposed to be someone who I can kind of lean on and trust that they know more than I do, right? But you see someone who's half your age, you're like, there's no way you know more than I do.
Right.
Obviously, there's no way that I could tell that or you could tell that, but... There's certainly a stigma there. Let's see where to take this next. That's.
I can make one more point and see if where
yeah.
Takes
Go
us.
ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know if I think I've said this accidentally, or maybe I haven't. It doesn't really matter. But I'll finally disclose. At this point, who cares? I work at the moment of this recording for Publix. The reason why I say that is because normally I wouldn't say it, but what I'm about to point out is me working there lends credibility to what I'm saying because I've experienced it. So one thing that happens a lot of Publix, and it sure is true of a lot of businesses, especially corporate businesses, corporate chains, things like that, is people who I will see as a manager. I first got there, they're a manager, and eventually we get a chance to talk a little bit, and it turns out that this person started at Publix, but they were the lowest paid employee at the time, which is usually the beggar. They were getting shopping carts, things like that. And now here they are 20 years later, and they're the manager.
Yeah.
They didn't become a manager because they got some kind of college degree. They didn't get a manager because they were considered the highest quality produce manager in the entire country, and Publix snatched them up. What this person did was it got a job at Publix with no experience, no skills that were related to Publix, no Publix. They didn't know the Publix CEO, but they started there and they worked at the company in various jobs, worked their way up, understood how the company worked, understood how the business model, understood what the business was looking for, what the company was looking for, did everything they were supposed to do, and now they're a produce manager. And from what I understand, the department manager at Publix can make six figures. So if money's your goal, this person, you didn't need to go to college to do this at all. You don't even need to go anything related to I need to study retail management. Doesn't matter. You don't need to do any of that. Just work for that company and just stick it out. And they reward you with all the benefits, but they also reward you in terms of promotions, because they're like, we know that you know what the company's looking for because you've been through it, aka the experience.
Yeah. I love those stories. I love stories like that. I had something very similar. I mean, my first management job that I had was when I worked at Steak and Shake. If you guys don't know what Steak and Shake is, it was pretty good.
Figured out from the title.
It's pretty good. They have steaks and shake. No, it's not a steak restaurant. It's a burger restaurant. That has shakes and other stuff. So when I worked there as a shake maker. I started off making the milkshakes.
Thank you. The shakes are very good.
Yes.
So good job.
They were. I don't know if I haven't been in forever. I couldn't tell you what they're like anymore. But at the time we had servers. It was a lot different. Now it's all automated, and now it's just another fast food restaurant at this point, which is really unfortunate. But I digress. I started off as a shake maker. I worked my way up until I got to the point of into management at that company. And all I did was I learned, and I wanted to learn, and I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to take on more responsibility. And let me tell you something. It doesn't matter what company you're at, whether you're at a restaurant, whether you're at a skilled trades job, or whether you're at a job that, typically would people consider needing college degree, like a lot of white collar jobs. Showing that you care, that you want to learn more, showing that initiative is significantly more valuable and desirable than having a college degree. I can tell you from experience, because I've been in the blue collar workforce. I've been in white collar, sit down desk job kind of thing, and I can tell you that is what will ultimately move you ahead in any of these positions. Making $100,000 a year, by the way, making the six-figure income. I remember back when I first got into college the first time. That was my goal. I was like, hey, I want to get to the point where I can make six figures. Even today, that's still an admirable goal, but it's not even as much of a goal as it was back then. Because now everything with inflation and everything else, now it's, I don't know what the new goal is, $250,000 or something like that for your annual salary. But you can make these wages. You can make these wages by investing yourself into the job that you're doing and getting the experience built up in that job. I know this isn't necessarily the most related to college versus not college, but I also want to kind of steer people away from, as much as I possibly can, jumping jobs and jumping industries. I understand that a lot of us do it because we're trying to figure out what we like, figure out where we want to be in the workforce, and that's fine if that's where you're at. But if it's an option when you're younger, definitely try to figure out what you want to do and start working your way into it. That's also one of the benefits. I mean, kind of to tie this back to the college conversation, that's one of the benefits of getting into the workforce immediately after high school, or even while you're in high school, because now you're going to start getting an idea of, hey, is this an industry that I would want to spend my career working in? Or is this an industry that I want to stay as far away from as possible? Because you might have one of those two reactions. And if you do, both are valuable because they teach you something. They teach you they teach you which direction you want to go. For me, you're sharing.
And you're not going to know that just by learning how to do it in school.
No, you're not. And I can tell you from my own experience, I jumped around a lot before I finally figured out where I wanted to be. I'm where I want to be now, but it was not a quick process. Yes, the Value Added Podcast. This is where I want to be now.
Thank you.
But figuring that out was a long process. It was a long process to get to that point. And one of the risks you have of going to college and investing everything into one industry is that you've never worked there. Okay, if you're going in because you want to be an accountant, and you don't have a job in accounting, you don't work at a bank, you don't know anyone who works at a bank, but you just saw that accountants make six figures, whatever, so your immediate thought is, let me go to college to go be an accountant. What is going to happen if you get out the other side of those 4 years or 6 years, right? 4 or 6 years that you're in college, getting your degree in accounting, and you get into the workforce and you find out that this is the worst thing you could have possibly done with your life. And this happens. And I'm not saying this just anecdotally. I mean, this actually happens. People discover midway through their life that they absolutely hate what they're doing. And now if they want to switch, the reality is now if you want to go from being an accountant to, let's say, a doctor, your accounting degree means nothing anymore. All the investment that you spent in that doesn't mean anything. So that's my thoughts on it.
Zach, real quick. So in the past, more than once, you have complained, usually at my nudging, because I brought it up first, about one of the questions that you get at restaurants, which is what's good here.
Yep.
When you were making those complaints, you were referring to your time as a manager at Steak and Shake, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, in part. I also worked as a manager at Bob Evans restaurants, which if you guys haven't been to Bob Evans restaurants, it was a nice place. Can't speak on it anymore because I'm not there. But
is that another recommendation?
No recommendations here. Okay. I remember being there. I think it happened more at Bob Evans than it did at Steak and Shake, where people would go and ask that question. What's good here? And of course, I would think to myself, I don't even eat what's on your menu right now. Most of what I eat is just whatever the hell I feel like making up in the back. I'm just combining shit back there. I'm experimenting. It's great. It's great.
You probably don't do anything, and you don't want to try it either, yeah.
No.
So
I'll bring you the chef special. I'll just go whoop something up for you.
Speaking of complaints, we are going to take a short break, and we have this coming for you, and then we'll be back. This is why I hate people, and I promise it's the last time I'm going to do that annoying clap thing, but that's what we're doing today. We're not doing the one that is more common and popular. Well, maybe it's not more popular, but it's definitely more common. Yes, today we're doing This is why I hate people. And once again, comes from being on vacation. It's amazing how all these happen when I'm on vacation. Even while I'm on vacation, living my best life, people still find a way to annoy me. And maybe it's because those people are on vacation too. That's why it annoys me even more, because you shouldn't act this way when you're on vacation. Okay. But not Disney or Universal this time. This time I'm going to do this thing that Zach loves mentioning that I like to do all the time, and that is a cruise. I think it was the most recent cruise. Doesn't matter whether it was or not. So I'm at the food court, the buffet. Anyone who's been on a cruise will tell you that's one of the best things about the cruise. It's included, and it's almost all day. They close for like an hour and a half at a time to clean up and change it from breakfast to lunch to dinner. But other than that, it's open all day, and it's different stations that have different setups based on what it's for. You know, it's anytime the food is gone, there's someone magically just replacing it right after the other. It's incredible. It's amazing. I'm over walking around trying to figure out what I want to do. A lot of times it's based on lines, whatever's available. I don't really want to wait, which is important. That's somewhat related to the complaint I'm going to have. And I go over to the pizza area. I wanted either cheese or pepperoni. They were out of both. I was going to just keep walking. It's not a huge deal. There's something else out there I would like. The lady in front of me did not have the similar thought. She decided to go up to the counter and ask the guy who's already working. His back is turned. He's doing stuff with pizza. He's fluffing the dough and putting the cheese on and doing all this stuff. He's working. His back is turned, which means he's clearly not ready for conversation. Excuse me. I'm like, lady, I wanted to say, like, he's making the pizza. You can tell he's making the pizza. He turns around. Most people on a cruise ship, by the way, are foreigners, so they don't always have the best grasp of English. Okay. And she says, where's more pizza? Or something to that effect. It might have been that rude. Or something like, there's no more pizza, or something like that. That part I didn't hear. And he said, yes, 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Yes, 10 minutes. And he goes back to working. She turns around. She walks towards me. She's not walking towards me because it's me. She's happens to be walking that direction. She says, I don't have freaking 10 minutes. Yes, you do. You're on a cruise. Where are you going that you don't have 10 minutes? And do you not know how cruises work? He's making the pizza. And pizzas take a limited time to make. I guarantee you have 10 minutes to wait for pizza. Are you that entitled that the food that is included in the cost of the cruise, You can't wait 10 minutes for him to finish the pizza, throw it in the oven, take it out, cut it, and then put it on a plate for you. You can't wait 10 minutes to do that. I guarantee you do. You're not going to work. You don't have school. There's nothing that is keeping you. You're in the food court. Were you planning on spending 5 more minutes in the food court and nothing else? Would you have to go to some kind of like Lamaze class? What are you doing that is so important? I guarantee you have 10 minutes. The problem is you just don't want to wait because you think you're above that. I'm on a cruise. I shouldn't have to wait for pizza. Sorry, other people like the pizza too, including you, which is why you're here. That is such a shitty thing for somebody to do. Besides the way that she was talking to him, I guarantee you have to wait 10 minutes. You just are an impatient little bitch. This is why I hate people. Thank you.
Where do I begin?
I'm always suspicious when you have a slow pause before you
because
react.
there's a lot of stuff that you say. We typically do, for you guys who are new here, I will typically not talk during Brian's segments. He'll typically not talk during mine, because we're trying to give the floor to the other person. So obviously there's a lot of things I want to interject. First thing, just right off my head, in no particular order, I'm wondering, were you standing next to her, so when the guy turned around, he was like, you and her stay next to each other, so he thought you guys were together?
No. I was walking away, and I heard the lady screaming for the guy, and I turned around, and I'm like, I want to see what happens.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, so if he was looking at her, he probably could have saw me behind her, like somewhat behind her. Maybe he could see I was watching, but he probably didn't even notice I was there because he was focused on this.
Yeah, of course. But the entitlement, man, is really, it's really incredible. But it also makes me think, and on a serious note, I've never gotten to go on one of these cruises, unfortunately. But
which you're not bitter about.
I'm not bitter about at all, of course. But I've never been on one of these cruises, so I've never been to one of these places. Actually, let me rewind, because technically this is true. When I've gone to buffets, people go inside, they pay when they come in, so they feel like, I've already paid, I don't have to pay anything else, now I'm entitled to everything here. Okay, sure, whatever. And the attitude...
So is everybody else.
And so is everyone else. But the attitude that people come with can be really, really ridiculous sometimes. I've seen a lot of situations at buffets similar where a person is just yelling at a worker because something's not quite ready. Have you ever been to a buffet before, lady? Okay,
right.
You have to understand that, I don't know when that ran out. Maybe he just put a pizza out there 5 minutes ago, but so many people came by and grabbed it, he hasn't had time to put the new one out. Or maybe he's been busy with something else. Things happen, and if they don't, they're not always just going to have a pizza just waiting to slap on there as soon as the other one goes away. Maybe they have to start from scratch or make it or whatever. It's worth waiting for. But with the cruise thing in particular, you're paying before you even get on. So I can only imagine the amount of entitlement that people feel because they feel, I've already paid for this. I'm getting it all right now. You just talked about another... What was the story? It was an alcoholic drink, I think, you said, in your last segment a little while ago, a few episodes ago.
Oh, with the wait in 3 minutes.
Yep, the wait in 3 minutes.
It wasn't open yet. Yep. She said, we're open in 3 minutes, and she stormed away and said, God forbid you open in 3 minutes early.
Yeah, because they're thinking in their head, I've already paid for this. I expect you to jump through some hoops and do something extra for me. It's kind of like the going above and beyond that you hear a lot about in customer service. You should go above and beyond for people. Sure. If you're paying for it and you're paying in the moment, then I kind of get it because you want to secure the business. But at this point, look, there's another perspective here, right? You've already paid, you're here. I don't care if you're unhappy. Right? You already paid us.
And more importantly, that pizza chef is not the CEO of the cruise line. Mm-hmm. He's getting paid the same amount regardless. He is probably holding on to his sanity. He does not give a shit about whether or not you get your pizza right away. And that's the thing. It's not like we were out of pizza and, sorry, no more pizza for the rest of the cruise. It was literally coming in 10 minutes. Like, come on. You can't wait 10 minutes.
Even if there was, like, is there nothing else on a buffet line that you can eat, to tie yourself over for those long 10 minutes?
There's been many times on the cruises I've been on where I go to get something and it's out. And I'm like... first of all, I'll never complain to the worker, but even if I have like a oh shucks kind of thing, I'm just like, just move on to the next thing. There's plenty of options.
Yeah, well, you know what has solved this problem is if that pizza chef guy had a college degree. Okay. Am I right?
Here we go.
If he had only gone to college, he would have known that the math for how many slices are going to go away per hour and how fast he needs to get the pizza out, so that way Karen doesn't miss another slice.
Yes. Things that piss me off but should. Zach segues.
All right. Well,
do you want me to go into my I mentioned how we went on the air here, how I wanted to mention 2 things about this topic.
Yeah.
I mentioned one.
Yeah.
Shall I just get into the next
Go
one?
for it.
Okay. I guess it's similar in terms of, if I was guiding somebody, the first thing I said is you have to figure out what you want to go for. And the second part is I've had this belief, and I wish I knew this back when I was 18, because I went to college, at least not at 18, is if you don't know what you want to go for, don't go to college. And another thing is if you know what you want to go for, but back to my first suggestion, you don't need college for it, then don't go to college. But what happens is a lot of times people just are given the impression that they just have to go to college right out of high school. And when you live in high school, you are not really attuned to the real world.
No.
Your bubble is the entire town you live in. All your friends are in that same town because they go to the same school. It's been like a 4-block radius. You don't spend much time outside of your town, so like doing things even with your outside of your friends, because that's all you like. You stick. You don't drive yet until the end of high school, so you're used to just like where you can walk to and areas, parks that you're familiar with, things like that. You have no grasp of the real world, and this is Zach's point earlier. And suddenly they're like, make the most important decision in your life. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? So if you don't know what you want to do, my suggestion to that person would be Zach's suggestion: get a job. Even if you have no idea what you want to get a job in, because you don't know what field you want to get into, just get a job somewhere. Somewhere close. Just get your feet in the door with something. It'll get you the idea of working for a living, the idea of what other people in those industries go through. And like Zach said, you can figure out this is something I want to be interested in or not. And if it's the former, you can take steps to pursue that. But, if back to the doctor example, if you know when you're 16 you want to be a doctor, maybe your father was a doctor, your mother was a doctor, or is it something that you're really interested in your whole life? You want to be a doctor? Okay. Then when college comes, you know exactly what you want to do. I want to go eventually go to med school. So to do that, I got to go to college, and I got to major in these things, take these courses, and go to med school. So your path is easily laid out, and it makes sense to go to college. But if you're just like, I've just in high school, I did well in high school, but I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I have no freaking idea. Then going to college is the worst thing you can do. Because all you're going to do is you're going to waste your time there partying, socializing, doing all these things. You're going to take classes, and you might do well in the classes, but you're not going to have any desire to pursue anything because you still don't know what you want to do. So you're just going to go through the motions just like you did in high school. And by the time your 4 years are out, you have all this debt you got to pay off, and you still don't know what you want to do, and you have no experience. So that would be my advice to people. If you're 18 or you're about to be 18, and it's like, should I go to college or not? Well, do you know what you want to do? No, you don't? Then don't go to college. Simple as that.
I'm 100% right there with you, because that's what I would have told myself. I've thought about this a lot. I've thought a lot in my life about, hey, if I could go back in time to one point in my life, where would it be and why? The college example is not where I would go. I have other things in my life that I would think are more important that I would like to go back to kind of remedy a situation. But this is one of the contenders for sure. Because if I would have told myself way back then, don't pursue this path that's going to take you down a direction in which obviously I've never used and never completed, go into the workforce and start building yourself up the experience. I wish I could go back and tell myself that. I wish I could go back and restart that, because I imagine, where would I be now? Where would I be now had I made that decision? And I think a lot of people who end up later in life and they say, wow, I made all these mistakes, I jumped around from industry to industry, spent all this time in college. Listen to these people, because these people do know what they're talking about. They've had the time to kind of be, retrospective on their life and see where they went wrong. I also heard from
there was a time, probably our parents' generation, where college was the path to go regardless, because that was like the only way to move forward was to get a college degree, because back then it wasn't oversaturated, so it made you stand out.
Yeah.
But now that's not the case.
But even I don't know much about that time period, obviously. But even in that time period, you got to think experience probably still trumped education, unless it was a high skilled job that you needed the education for. And
very, very
and to one of the points that you made, Brian, a lot of the jobs that we get into, we have this perspective that is going to take schooling in order to get into it. And in reality, it might not at all, especially if we're looking at various positions. Yeah, it might take a certain degree to be a doctor, but what about a pharmacist? What about a nurse? What about, and those require education in their own right. But is there anything adjacent to it or similar to it that might not require a degree or require less of a degree? There's levels to all of this. If you want to work in legal, you can have doctorate degrees in legal fields, master's degrees in legal fields, or you can have no degree at all and still get into the legal field doing something else. Maybe you're doing some kind of investigative work. Maybe you're a private investigator. And the issue is that when you're in school and you're trying to figure this out, is you don't have the experience. You don't have the experience, and especially if you don't know someone who does it, you really are just kind of playing off of a fantasy. This is what I imagine the job's going to be like, and so this is what I'm going to pursue and spend my time on. It's one of the more old man things that I would say is look back on my life and say, slow down there, buckaroo. Make some better decisions. I also want to give a hot take in this episode because I think it's related about my own personal opinion. I think that high school is too long.
Hot take from Zach. High school's too long?
I think high school's too long. I do. I think people.
You mean the path from elementary school all the way to high school, or just high school specifically?
High school specifically. Well, okay, so the K through 12.
Right, that's what is that what you mean? K through 12,
K through 12.
Or you mean just high school?
I would be on board if we were to move it from K to 12 to K to 10, for example. And the reason I say this is if we for any of us who've been in high school, obviously probably most of us, and you've been in those later years, the stuff that you were learning in that time, how useful is that to your life today? We could even argue before then. Most of high school, as a matter of fact, I would say how much of the stuff you learn in high school at all is relevant to the things that you're doing in your life. Now imagine this.
I still maintain
Yep.
that my senior year of high school, especially because for me, I already had like my resume established for college. Again, at the time, that's what I thought I needed to do. So, I passed all the tests. I did all that. I took some like AP classes, but for the most part, I was already set for college. My senior year of high school was a freaking cakewalk. I did, especially the end of it. I did nothing. Like, I was leaving in the middle of the day to like go down the street to a pizza place. Like, it was a cakewalk.
Yeah, no, it's cool, obviously, in a way, but at the same time, if we think about how valuable your time could have been spent somewhere else, you could have. You really could have. And if we look at the labor force, or we look at these kind of low-skilled jobs, why is it exactly that we say a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old can't do a cash register at McDonald's? Why we have the age of 16, I think it is, in the state that we live in. I think it's 16 that you could do a cashier job. Why is it that a 13-year-old is not capable of it, or a 14-year-old is not capable of it? I get it. It gets into the whole child labor laws, and now you feel like you're kind of forcing them into it. But building up the work experience, take for consideration what a 13-year-old's doing if they're not working, right? You're probably doing something stupid. Right? You're probably doing something really, really ridiculous things. You're still learning about life. You're still going through that stage. But having a little tiny part-time job where you're working, 2 hours a day or something, or an hour a day or something really small.
Back to Publix. That's what Publix does. They're
right.
Minors. From 14 to 16, they work like 9 to 11.
Okay, I mean
9 a.m. to 11.
So you mentioned Publix is a great example. If you can start Publix at 14 and be like a cart, you grab carts and bring them back. At the bare minimum, this is going to teach you some level of responsibility outside yourself. Okay, I know people in my own personal life who are definitely older, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, whatever, who don't know how to make their own food for themselves or how to change trash bag, which is insane to me. My 7-year-old son knows how to change trash bag, and I'm already teaching them how to cook and different things. The level of immaturity and dependability, or whatever the proper way to say that is, from our youth, from our teenagers, is astounding. And if we did a system like this where people were getting into the workforce earlier, I think it would help a lot with getting people on the right track for whether they want to go to college or not and what they want to specialize in, because you're getting the exposure to the workforce earlier in your life.
That's interesting, Zach. Because forget about the skills specific to the job. Forget about that for a moment. Once you get a job, you learn things like showing up on time for your shift. Mm-hmm. Like, when it comes to like doing a chore, like take the trash out, you can be like, well, let me finish watching the movie first.
Right.
or I'll do it later. But when you're working for a company, I scheduled you at 10 a.m. You got to be here at 10 a.m. and you can't just leave and go home because you feel like I got to finish this video game. Like I schedule you 10 to 2, you're working 10 to 2. So it teaches you that discipline and to and especially the times where like you don't feel like going to work. I don't mean because like you're actually sick. I don't really feel like going to work, which we all have those days. It teaches you to like go do it anyway, which beyond work teaches you to, as an adult, when you become an adult, to do things that need to be done but you don't want to do. It teaches you kind of do it anyway. So it teaches you life skills that go way beyond being a cashier or flipping burgers or taking carts, way beyond it, but that you can't get by just like going to school, because school is very different.
School is very different. School tries to teach you some of these things.
Tries to,
but I think it has its purpose. I think its purpose starts to taper off, especially depending on what jobs we're talking about, around the point of getting into high school, and especially through the midpoint of high school. I think it really tapers off a lot.
So to clarify your position, Zach, K to 10. So now instead of being 18, you're 16 when you graduate high school, and then your recommendation, since you're all about recommendations today, is 2 years at least in the workforce. Because now we're back to 18, the same year, and at that point, it might make it easier to decide if you want to start college at that point or continue working. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. But I wouldn't want to eliminate the possibility of people going to college earlier. I myself, for example, I started college when I was 16, and the reason I was able to graduate early with whatever, I found high school to be pretty easy, especially for those later classes. So I was able to graduate early. But with that said, I think if you were 16,
I cut you off, sorry.
No, you're good. I think if you're 16 years old and you've completed the 10th grade and you've gotten all the education that you needed up to that point, I think that the things you're learning in 11th grade and 12th grade are too generalized to be really beneficial for what you're going into. And consider this as well. Let's say you're 16 years old and you already know that you want to be an engineer. You're taking engineering, your family works in engineering, or you know somebody or whatever, so you already decide you want to be an engineer. I would have no issue with you going from 16 to now I'm 17 years old, right out of high school, and I'm going into getting my community college credits for the next 2 years. So by the time I'm 18, instead of me just starting college, now I'm already 2 years into it. And so I've now shortened the gap of how long it's going to take me to get into the workforce. And of course, in the meantime, you could still work a job. People do that all the time. When I was in college, I also worked a job at the same time. But the exposure to jobs, I think, is the bigger point that I want to make with this whole proposition, which obviously I know it's not going to happen. I don't have any political sway. But the job market, I think, is the bigger consideration, because if you can get yourself into a job, I think is going to help people understand a lot more where they want to be in life.
Yeah, I mean, because back to my point, I'll reiterate it, because I think having a job, especially at that age, forget about when you're 40, but at that age, having the job teaches you things that are very important to being an adult that have nothing to do with the job.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's why I would say, if you're 18, and back to my recommendation before, and you don't know what you want to do, get a job. I don't even care what the job is, because the point is not the specific job. The point is to have a job, because that is where you learn skills that transcend that specific job and can be applied to any job or to anything really with life. Because the whole thing about the discipline, discipline doesn't apply just to going to your job. Discipline applies to a lot of different things. So they help you to acquire life skills that before you were up to that point when you're 16, you probably do not have, and you probably had no interest in having. Mm-hmm. But it kind of forces you to have it just based on the fact that, like, if you don't come to your shifts, we're gonna fire your ass.
Yep, and you're out.
Like that, and it's simple as that. Now I know when you're 16, you don't really care that much if you get fired. You brush it off. You're like, I don't want to work there anyway. But some people, even if they don't want the job, don't want to get fired. So that's enough of a kick in the ass to like do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. Just so you guys know, as a little final closing thought on this, I started my first job when I was 16. It was a job with a landscaping company. So I showed up, helped them mow lawns, do that kind of thing, taking care of equipment, that sort of thing. I don't remember how long I worked that job. It wasn't very long because that company kind of moved around and did other things. But like I said, I finished high school when I was 16. I started my first ever job when I was 16. And I went to college when I was 17, early on when I was 17, because it was right around my birthday. I was almost 17 when I graduated, but I like to say I was 16 when I graduated high school. So, makes me sound better, right?
It sure does, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if I could do it, I think a lot of other people could do it. And I think it's beneficial, not necessarily that it helped me become some kind of great success, but here I am on the Value Added Podcast. And so I think that says, speaks volumes, right, Brian?
Sure, volumes. I hope, are we both now? Am I supposed to share my first job, or is that?
Sure, go ahead.
I was an adult film star. No,
okay.
How
old were
I
you?
was
That's the problem.
When I say adult film star, I mean the people who watched it were adults, not necessarily the stars. I was a busboy for all of a day and a half.
Okay.
And on the second day, my father and stepmother actually came into the restaurant as customers. They never went to the restaurant before, but they kind of wanted to like see me in action.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they left, they went home and I called them and said, "Can you pick me up?" And I never went back. That was my first job. That was when I knew I never want to work in food and beverage again.
That's hilarious. I thought you were going to say something like your parents walked in, they made the worst mess on the table possible, and you're like, "I ain't cleaning this shit, man. I'm out of here."
That is something that a dad would do. I could see you doing that at some point. No, that's not how the story ended. But that's when I knew I didn't want to do food and beverage. Now, granted, it helped that it was a Mexican restaurant. I'm not a huge fan of Mexican food, so maybe that was part of it. Mm-hmm. Maybe if it was an Italian restaurant, I'd be like all in. I'd be like, yeah, I'll eat the leftover ravioli, no problem. So maybe that was part of it, or maybe it's just I just don't have the stomach to like mop down tables. And hungry people are one of the worst of the customers. Hungry people. I'm just leave it there.
Okay. All right, well, guys, hopefully today's conversation has been interesting, at least giving you a little more perspective on the topic of whether to go to college or in high school. As I'll reiterate what I said at the beginning of this hour. The choice is ultimately up to you, what you decide to do with your life. I can give you advice all day long. Brian, you can give people advice all day long. But ultimately, it's up to you. The only thing I'll say for you as my advice at the end here is the same advice I get every other episode of this podcast. It's be smart and to think about your decisions well in advance before you get to the point where, you know, you're like me with no hair and you're just now getting into what you want to get, what you want to do with your life. So don't be like me.
You
be
put
smart.
so much attention on that, and A, no one can see it, and B, you don't want people to see it. Just stop bringing attention to it.
Exactly. It's a mystery, right? So now people are going to stick around.
No, it's not. Not anymore. Not anymore.
Well, they haven't seen it. So that's what I mean. It's a mystery. It's covered up like a present. I see. Yeah, that's all. That's all my final thoughts. Anything from you, Brian?
I mean, I guess the two main points I want to get to, I got to. If you want to go to college, make sure you know before you decide you want to go to college. Decide what you want to go to college for, and then from there you can decide if college is the right path for you. And if the answer is I have no idea what I want to do, don't go to college. At least not at that point.
Okay,
that's it.
Fair enough, guys. Well, thank you for being here. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so at valueadded.zb@gmail.com. You can also use the comment section here on YouTube or here on Spotify, depending on where you're listening to this episode, and interact with the poll on this episode as well. Am I forgetting anything? I feel like that was really quick. No, I covered the bases? All right.
I think so.
All right, well, thanks for being here, guys. We'll see you next time on Friday at 8 a.m. Bye-bye.